So, hello everybody, this is Bhante Joe here, and I'm just here at Petticoat Creek Conservation Area, and thought to record a water for the internet. So I thought I could start with just a little meditation, so you can lean forward a bit and arch the spine, and look about 3 feet in front, and close our eyes. And can focus in on the breath, can know when it's coming in, and know when it's going out. If we breathe in a long breath, can just know I'm breathing in a long breath. And if we breathe in a short breath, can just know I'm breathing in a short breath. And can focus on the breath at the tip of the nose. And if notice any patterns of tension or tightness around the nose, around the face, can just let those relax. And can relax any patterns of tension around the cheeks, around the chin. And can practice breathing in and out from this area at the tip of the nose. When breathing in and out from the tip of the nose, can try to make mindfulness as continuous as possible. Being aware all the way through the in-breath. As the in-breath turns to the out-breath, all the way through the out-breath. And as the out-breath turns back to the in-breath again. Trying to make mindfulness as continuous as possible. Can open our eyes and do a water for the internet. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Buddhaṃ saranang gacchāmi, Dhammāṃ saranang gacchāmi, Sanghaṃ saranang gacchāmi. Dutiyampi Buddhaṃ saranang gacchāmi, Dutiyampi Dhammāṃ saranang gacchāmi, Dutiyampi Sanghaṃ saranang gacchāmi. Tatiyampi Buddhaṃ saranang gacchāmi, Tatiyampi Dhammāṃ saranang gacchāmi, Tatiyampi Sanghaṃ saranang gacchāmi. So, hope that everybody is keeping well wherever might be. And I've come down here again to Petticoat Creek Park. It was supposed to rain today, and so usually this park is pretty full, but today not so full. So this is good for me. And today met up with an old friend of mine from university. A kind of Canada visit continues. It's been nice to reconnect with the home and native land. And my friend, he now is a father of children, and doing well. And it was nice to hear his stories. We both have a mutual interest in kind of wilderness trekking. So we were talking a bit about that. Then a bit later we came down here to this Petticoat Creek conservation area, and we were walking around. And as we were walking around, we bumped into this couple who I've bumped into in this park several times before. So from time to time I come down to this park to walk around. There's usually nobody here during the day, and it's usually pretty silent, usually pretty quiet. So one time I bumped into this couple here, and we got to talking. They were, "What are you doing? Are you a Hare Krishna?" And it turned out they were from Poland, and they were turns out they're from Poland, and they're Catholics. So we had a nice discussion about religion and the overlaps in religion and these kind of things. And so we bumped into them with my friend, and we were talking. And I said, "This is a friend of mine who I knew from university." And they said, "Oh yeah, what did you guys take?" And I said, "Well, we both took business, but I became a monk and he became an accountant." And they pointed at me, they said, "Well, you're the lucky one." And then my friend, he had this kind of rejoinder. He's like, "Yeah, monks probably have less stress." But wait, somebody saw one of his videos that we used to know, or that I knew sometimes. He said, "Well, he's aged. You know, maybe the monk's life is stressful." So it's kind of interesting. There's a couple of suttas in the canon which have this phrase, or you want to call this kind of word. They use the word divine messengers. At least I think there's a couple. So these divine messengers are messengers that point to a person's mortality. So the first sutta, there's a man who has done evil his whole life. He's done bad his whole life. And he ends up going down to hell. And the king of hell asks him, "You know, didn't you see the first divine messenger?" He says, "No, I couldn't. I was heedless." And he says, "You never saw like a man who's sick or aged or old?" You know, it goes through all these, you know, first, second, third, fourth divine messenger, a man who's dead. And he says, "No, I couldn't. I was heedless." So then this man gets thrown into hell. And there's another sutta where there's a king. I don't know if they use the word divine messengers in this one, but I think they do. And he has this incredibly long lifespan. It's in a former life of the Buddha. And he, or seems like a former life of the Buddha. And he tells his barber, he says, "You know, when you see gray hairs on my head, let me know." And it's the divine messenger, basically. So he sees a gray hair on the king's head, and he lets him know. And the king basically says, "You know, all this wealth that I've accumulated, all this power I've accumulated, now I'm getting the message that it's going to fall away." So these divine messengers, these things like a person's hair getting gray, or, you know, their face changing, they look older and a little bit more decrepit, or their hair starts to go back. By the way, there's a tradition in the Thai forest tradition, its earliest strata. The monks would only shave their head once a month. So that tradition, there's no way to hide your graying hair or your receding hairline. You have to look at it. and it reminds you of your own mortality. But in any event, these are things that people don't usually like to look at. It's kind of the graying of the hair, people's teeth may be getting a little yellower, or even losing their teeth, or a person can't do the things that they used to do. I was just chatting with, I went to a doctor's office today, and the doctor said, I'm getting older, I can't work like I used to. And I was saying to my friend, well, I'm getting 40, I can't hike like I used to. So one notices all these kind of things, this kind of diminishing in one's abilities, and it's not something that people usually like to see or enjoy seeing. So the other day I was in a car with a young man. It was actually just yesterday. And we were talking about the life what life of young people is like today. Because it's now been a long time since I was in my 20s, and I don't really know. I wasn't too aware of what's going on with young people. So I've been kind of canvassing the younger people, like what do young people do? What's life like for young people today? And they get up to people that are doing the same things that they were when, more or less people seem to be up to the same things that they were doing when I was young. But young people seem to do a little bit more partying these days, essentially. So when a person is young with the blessings of youth, when they have, they say black hair with the blessings of youth here are that a person has a healthy body. Oftentimes their body doesn't show the signs of wear and tear. Their face, or whatever it might be, is at its most beautiful. And their health is at its most robust. So even then, one's future ahead seems kind of endless. It seems this, big road ahead. And it's kind of this long road that one can go down. And it's at these times that it seems like, well, being an accountant would be a really lucky thing. Being a monk would be really, really unlucky. Being a monk, I've got all these blessings of youth. I've got all these great things happening. And if you're a monk or if you're a religious person, that's an unlucky path. It's an unlucky occupation. You basically have to give up all these things, even in the prime of your life. So my friend and I talked further. This is a friend of mine from university. And we have other friends that we knew in university, or people that he knows from when we were young. And now some of them are making all kinds of really, really big money, kind of, hundreds of thousands of dollars or whatever it might be. And they're really rich. And, it's not necessarily a bad thing in Buddhism if people make all kinds of money. That's not really necessarily evil. Actually, the Buddha's chief disciples, some of them were quite wealthy. His two chief male disciples were very wealthy. And his two chief female disciples were kind of more normal, actually. They were like normal householders. But his two chief male ones were very rich, it seems. So it's not necessarily that wealth is a bad thing. But the interesting thing was that my friend said, well, yeah, they're making like double the amount they were before, but I don't know if they're any happier. Now, of course, this is a cliche. But when one is 20, with all the blessings of youth, one looks ahead to the future. And what one sees, if one can get this wealth, is this future that stretches off into infinity almost, where one is enjoying all these various things, and one is making this really big mark on the world. One of the interesting things is that when these divine messengers start to show up, the reason why people don't like to see them, or one may not like to see them, is because they're pointing to a future where all these things that one has accumulated gradually start to wear away, gradually start to fall away. Actually, there's really nothing that a person can do about this. It's kind of a person's ability to engage in the external world in these ways depends on them having a fit and healthy body, number one. If a person doesn't have a fit and healthy body, then their ability to enjoy all these external things in the world falls away. So it's not like the future when you're 20, it seems like it stretches out endlessly, but actually the body starts to wear away. It reaches a tipping point and it starts to wear. It's kind of, when you're 40, it's kind of starting to wear away. So at 20, the path of wealth seems very enticing, seems very lucky. But when that wearing away happens, when the divine messengers show themselves, if one has spent one's life like this, then one can feel afraid. Everything that one has worked for may fall away, so one wants to hide it. But if one spends one's life in a different way, if one tries to cultivate morality, if one tries to cultivate generosity, and more importantly, if one tries to cultivate meditation for the sake of finding a happiness that doesn't depend on the body, doesn't depend on wealth, doesn't depend on these other things, then the divine messengers act in a different way. When one has spent one's whole life searching outside for sensual pleasures, one wants to cover up the divine messengers. And society wants it too. Kind of people treat you different if you have gray hair, or if you have a cane, or if you're a little hunched over. They don't treat you the same. And your ability to get the things that society craves is the same. So one wants to stop it. One wants to block it out, but one knows that one can't. But although it seems unlucky when you're 20, or can seem unlucky when you're a young man, to give up these things, if one spends a life cultivating or looking for a type of happiness that doesn't depend on all these external things, and when the divine messengers come, one doesn't necessarily want to cover them. So in the Thai forest tradition, they don't shave their head. You look and see that you're getting older. And that getting older is a message. It's a divine message. It means you have a limited amount of time. So when people spend their life well, when they have a goal in mind, a religious or spiritual goal in mind, and one doesn't necessarily have to be a monk to have these, although being a monk is good. Then when the divine messengers show themselves, the fear that can come up is not necessarily the fear that I'm going to die, what's going to happen. It's the fear that I've been here, I've had all this time, I've been collecting treasure, now I only have so much time to get the most out of it. I've only got so much time to get the main benefits that I'm seeking. So these people say, well, you're probably the lucky one. You're the monk. You're probably the unlucky one. You're the accountant. They didn't say unlucky. But whether one's life is lucky or unlucky doesn't, being a monk has better spiritual potential than not being a monk. But it depends on how one lives one's life, whether one's an accountant or a monk. Whatever one does, if one spends one's life, spends one's time cultivating a good heart, spends one's time cultivating these things that are important and having important spiritual goals, then when the divine messengers show themselves, they send the right message. One gets the right message, that I have a limited amount of time, so I'm going to do what I can. One doesn't get the wrong message. I have a limited amount of time, let's forget about it. Let's cover it up. Let's try to make sure that I don't remember that it's going to happen until it does. So we all have this opportunity. One has this opportunity because the divine messengers are all around us. There's sick people all around us. There's old people all around us. All around us, there's people who are dying, actually, although it's more hidden in Western culture. And the divine messengers show themselves on one's own body. They show themselves to one when one's hair gets old, when teeth start to get a little bit yellow, when one can't see as well, when one can't work as many long hours. It's a message. It's a message that time is running out. So there's all these stories about people. As one teacher I really likes, there's these stories about people who, you hear they know they're going to die, and then in their last moments of life or their last few weeks or whatever, they try to do all these things that they realize are really important to do. But he kind of jokes, so one doesn't have to wait to that time. The divine messengers are all around us, and what's really important is always important. It may not be what seems important when you're 20 looking into an endless future, but when one reflects, when one looks, it's actually always what's important. It's always important even when you're 20. It's important when you're 40. It's important when you're 60. It's important throughout your life. So long as this opportunity exists, we have time. We have time to cultivate goodness. And we have time to try to incline our minds to a goal that's very important. We have time to incline our minds to a goal that searches for a happiness that doesn't change, that searches for the deathless. And so long as we spend our life this way, then it's a life well spent. Okay? So I think leave that for reflection, and wishing all the blessings of Dhamma practice.